everyone. I'm Jiwon Choi here at Win TV Chicago, and thank you for joining us today. This summer marks the 71st anniversary of the armistice of the Korean War. And that means a lot of those who have families in North Korea have not been able to see their loved ones for the past 7 decades. As many of them are in their 80s and 90s, the sense of urgency to reunite the families grows immensely. The U.S. Congress currently has 2 bills, each in the House and the Senate, to help reunite those families by creating a national registry of divided Korean American families and their relatives in North Korea. So we have 2 very special guests today with us to discuss the issue. Ambassador Turner was appointed the U.S. Special Envoy for the North Korean human rights issues last year, and her office at the Department of State would play a key role in building the national registry if the bills are signed into law. Welcome to the studio, Ambassador.
Thank you, Jiwon.
Senator Mark Kirk is one of the very first U.S. politicians to work on the divided families and helped pass 2 historical bills that pushed the U.S. government to prioritize the issue of reuniting the families during his time in Congress. Senator Kirk is the honorary chairman of the National Coalition for the Divided Families. Thank you for your time with us today, Senator.
Thank you for having me.
So first, I'd like to ask some questions about the bills that are introduced in the House and the Senate currently. So last year, President Joe Biden signed the National Defense Authorization Act that included a part about facilitating conversation around reuniting the divided families. So Ambassador, could you explain what those 3 bills, including the one that was signed last year and the 2 ones that we have currently in Congress, what they're about and the significance of those 2 bills that are currently sitting in the House and Senate?
So unfortunately, I can't comment on pending legislation that is in Congress, but I will say that the U.S. government has undertaken a number of efforts, including my own effort to prioritize divided families and to conduct outreach that would help us to get a better sense of the size of the community and the needs of the community, how they would like to be reunified with their families, if video reunifications are desired by the community, if some people want to be able to return to their hometowns, so that we can better advocate on behalf of this community.
Right. So, Senator Mark Kirk, you've passed a couple bills about this issue. What's your kind of prospect on the current 2 bills that are, introduced in the House and Senate?
We've got a good bipartisan coalition to make sure that we, of the 2 million Korean Americans in this country, they are Korean Americans, and they should be able to petition Congress to, my great frustration of being in office 17 years, in my 17 years in the Congress, I did not get 1 Korean American to visit their relatives in North Korea. The United States, the North Koreans, in many ways, kind of suck up to us. And definitely, if the Secretary of State brought this up, we would have some success. But for the 2 million Korean Americans, I want to say, you are people, you are citizens, you have a voice. You should petition the Congress for that.
Right. So, do you have any advice for your, fellow congressmen in D.C. for really pushing for this law?
I do. It's an issue where that most congressmen don't speak Korean or don't know that many Koreans. That I would say, for 2 million, that means there would be 800,000 people per congressman. That means we could have 3 Korean American congressman in this Congress, always advocating for that community. And the special thing I'm very proud of, here in Chicago, we have about 60,000 Korean Americans. And so we've been a leading voice on this issue.
Is that something that you see lacking of currently, of the efforts that are made in D.C.?
I'd like the Korean Americans to be less Asian and, holding back, and more American. The squeaky wheel gets the grease in America. So just speak out and vote. The most important thing we can do is organize the Korean American community by congressional district and by state. so that the representative that know there are your constituents are there and they want you to take action.
Okay, that's really a good perspective. So let's say the bills are signed into law, then what's going to come next for the State Department to, what are the next actions that you would take?
I think the most important thing is doing outreach within the community, finding out where individuals that identify as divided family members are, and making sure that they're aware that the registry exists, and defining what participating in the registry means. And so that's going to take a lot of cooperation between the administration as well as the Korean American community, mobilizing Korean American youth to also help us get out and reach some of the older generation who are most impacted by this, especially if they're not as plugged into some of the normal resources that we would use to do community outreach.
Right. I understand this kind of approach was taken by the South Korean government in the previous years and have seen some success in reuniting those families. Can you explain how the U.S. government has come up with this plan to, the politicians have been working with, a lot of different people, but how did this bill and plan first came into place?
Well, I think one of the things has been largely the effort of the impacted community through organizations like the Divided Families USA group, as well as other Korean Americans who have done advocacy, as well as Senator Kirk here, who has been working to be a voice for this community for many years. There is also, there are active supporters on Capitol Hill of the legislation who are also doing that kind of outreach that is important to make sure that whatever steps we take are reflective of what the community wants.
But I will say something else. We have seen the South Korean government actually be able to get some South Koreans to meet their relatives. We need the American government to get a sense of competition against the South Korean government, to get our Korean Americans to see their relatives in North Korea, because we can definitely do better than the South Korean government. Congressmen and senators don't really know the Korean American constituents that well, and don't know. I just heard that we have about 500 defectors here in Chicagoland. So that's an important thing.
Right.
That's 500 is no sweat putting together on a Facebook group.
Because you've been very much involved in these conversations, and you've been working really closely with the Korean community here. How was everybody has the first time, right? How was the first process of, reaching out to them, getting really in touch with them, and, being involved in these conversations?
I tell the frustrating thing for me, when I was in North Korea, I would raise this with Kim Dae-gwan. I actually told him politically it would be good for the North Koreans to facilitate this process. My main concern was the Korean American families were paying corrupt middlemen in North Korea and I wanted their government to do this at no cost to make sure it could be done. And the problem is, Kim Dae-gwan told me, Korean Americans are just all put under the unification ministry. That is the way that they're just kind of put aside, seen as just whatever. But the point that I wanted to, Korean Americans are Americans with the full weight of the superpower behind them.
How likely do you think these two bills are going to pass in Congress?
Likely. Right now, the problem is in an election year, Congress doesn't pass a lot of legislation because it's worried about success or failure of the legislation affecting the outcome of the election. So they tend not to legislate that much in an election year like 2024. So I have modest appetites about this. The real thing is, when I was in Congress, we didn't have a Julie Turner. And now that shows that we've got Julie on the spot to make sure every day is Human Rights Day in North Korea, to make sure that happens.
I really wish that's going to happen. You went to North Korea, and you, with the help of the then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, you wanted to make that reunion happen, but it failed to really, come to realize. So what's the difference in terms of the climate between the U.S. and North Korea on this matter then and now?
Now it's pretty negative. The point that I made with Julie here to say that it would be symbolic if we had one particular relative from America meet their relatives, and that should be Chahi Stanfield. And the problem is these people are not young. And, we would be losing at the same rate that we're losing World War II veterans, which is 2,000 a day.
Is there any concerns when it comes to, even if the bills are passed and you guys start to build the national registry, what are some concerns that you have in terms of really making the reunion happen?
I think it is the time sensitivity here. There is a sense of urgency because of the aging population that we're talking about that is most impacted. And so we continue to put out our offers to the North Korean government to come back to the table. I have said that on numerous occasions that I'm ready and willing to talk to the North Korean government about these issues. We very much want to see a family reunification happen. No family member should have to be separated from their loved one for as long as this community has been separated. And really the ball is in the North Korean government's court at this point to allow for these things to happen. We're ready. I'm standing by and ready to engage on this conversation, and very much hope that we can make it happen before it's too late.
So it sounds like the U.S. government has been trying to get the North Korean government to be involved in the conversation, to sit with us and to have a conversation about this, but has not been working well. Is that correct?
We continue to make them aware that we are ready to have a conversation without preconditions.
Do you think the current political climate and the situation we have, especially with the upcoming elections, how much the political aspect affect this topic and conversations around it?
I think at the end of the day, all we can do is continue to do what we've been doing, which is to continue to offer to come to the table without preconditions, and that's what we're going to continue to do, regardless of what is happening in our domestic political situation. I should underscore that this is a very bipartisan issue. For the reason that I just stated, is that no one should be separated from their loved one as long as this community has been separated. And so if there was ever going to be an issue that I believe would be consistent, regardless of political outcomes here in the United States, it's this one.
So, Senator Kirk, I would love to hear a little more about your North Korean visit and how that was able to be happening there. So how was the conversation? How were the conversations with the North Korean officials there, and what were the vibes that you were getting from the visit?
I was there
then?
because the North Koreans had run out of food, and President Clinton had made the right decision to start the largest food aid program in the history of the UN. And I went there on behalf of the House Republicans to see if the Army was stealing all the food. So, and I came back saying that the famine is real. I was taught by Johns Hopkins University how to interview refugees. They said this is our methodology of counting, and I came up with a count of about 2 million people died in the famine in the 90s.
That's horrific. Personal curiosity here.
Yeah.
Since you've been working a lot with the Korean community, is there any reason why you've been involved and you're inspired to take actions on this matter?
I share a commonality with Julie. She's from the Holt Adoption Agency. My sister Maya was from the Holt Adoption Agency. So we're always very pro-Korean culture. And the great thing about when Maya came to live with us in 1972, the Korean Consul General lived right next to us in Kenilworth, Illinois. And Young Hee Kim, the best friend of my sister, my older sister, taught my sister Robin how to bury kimchi pots in the backyard. We had never seen that. So we've been very pro-Korean culture.
That's so lovely, and I'm so touched by it, actually. I've never actually buried a kimchi pot in there, so yeah, it's quite a culture. Thanks for sharing that. I would love to kind of go back to the National Registry and the potential plan for that. What's the next step for, these divided family members to do? Like, would they have to submit something, register where, and what's in the ballpark for the plan?
I think there's still a lot of exploratory work that we need to do to answer that question. As with many things in American culture and American society, we want to make sure that we are respectful of privacy rights and keep the data secure. And then also that we are collecting this information in a way that gets out into communities. Everyone may not have a Facebook account to be able to connect with advertisements that we might make about where to register. Not everybody might be going to the State Department website every day looking for those media notes. And so how do we get out and do the kind of outreach that we need to? It's probably going out to local community centers, visiting faith-based organizations or community organizations in that way to let people know this is where you register, this is how you register, this is what we're going to do with your data, and how we're going to use it responsibly.
Right. Going to be probably challenging, but also it's very important to,
I want to add something about the registry. The American people will respect a registry that is put together by the United States government. And once we have a registry of people's addresses and we can sort it by congressional district, and it gives someone, an advocate like me, a chance to go to my congressman like Brad Schneider and say, hey, I want you have 5,500 North Korean Americans who have relatives who would really like you to work on this issue. The registry in itself is a very powerful political tool.
It really indeed is. And, I have a personal hope in this too. If and when this happens, I'm also wondering, as the people affected are getting older, they're in their 80s, 90s, they don't even know whether their families back in North Korea are still alive. What can they do to really urge this action to take place and make this happen, get to be able to see the families?
Get involved. Reach out to your congressman. He wants to know who you are. He has an office in your local community. And this is an easy issue where you don't have to say, yeah, because we're bipartisan and have Democratic and Republican support. You can say, you don't have to upset any Democrats or Republicans. We got people on both sides of the aisle that are with us on this one. This is an easy kill just to ask the congressman to be on the legislation. When we get like 400 or 500 on a piece of legislation, that's a big deal.
Right. I mean, this is your second visit. You're going to have a speech at the University of Chicago later today. What makes you come back to Chicago on this matter? What kind of significance does the Chicago community hold?
I think there are three primary reasons to be in Chicago and to be talking about North Korean human rights, to be talking about divided families. First is that there is a very large Korean American community, an overseas Korean community here in Chicago. And so in terms of being able to reach a very large and active community of Korean Americans, Chicago is a great place. There's also a very large community of North Korean refugees living here in Chicago. And another part of the purpose of my visit is to also demonstrate support for that community, especially as they start new lives here in the United States. North Korean refugees are a living testament to what the North Korean people are capable of when they live in a society that is rights respecting. And so seeing them succeed, seeing them become small business owners, entrepreneurs, government bureaucrats or any of the other opportunities that are open to them here in the United States is amazing, and I want to make sure that I'm doing outreach to that community and helping to demonstrate U.S. government support for them. And then the third reason is there are a lot of academic institutions here in Chicago, and a huge part of my visit, including my remarks this evening at the University of Chicago, is focused on raising awareness amongst students and youth activists who will really be the next generation that carries forward these issues into the future, whether it be second generation divided family members, second or third generation divided family members, who will see through to the end those family reunifications that maybe their parents or grandparents weren't able to achieve, whether it be activists that are going to advocate for North Korean human rights, but just making sure that we have a young, energized community of people that are going to go out there and engage with our government, engage with other governments, and hopefully help lead the way in bringing about change in North Korea.
Right. So, I mean, since your last visit, and you were appointed last October, right?
Yes.
So, you know, we all are, especially in North Korea, those people are also living in the aftermath of COVID. Food shortages are still real, you know. It's hard to imagine them having all these resources they probably needed to take care of those people. What are some significant changes that you see from the starting of your taking office and to now?
So one of the things that I've been excited to see is a new energy around North Korean human rights. COVID was really difficult on everyone. We all felt it personally, but I have been regularly saying COVID was the worst thing that ever happened to the North Korean people, but the best thing that ever happened to the North Korean government, because it allowed for them to increase restrictions and controls internally. Recently, they sentenced some high school kids to 12 years of hard labor in a prison camp for watching a TV show. You know, I watch a lot of K-dramas. We were talking about K-dramas earlier. You know, to imagine a place where you could be sent to a prison camp for that is pretty hard for any American to really absorb. But talking about these things, having these things raised in more international events. There's been a lot of good energy here in the United States, a lot of good energy in South Korea. The UN Human Rights Council just passed a resolution in March, maybe earlier in April, that condemned the human rights situation in North Korea once again, and called for accountability for those most responsible. It also raised this issue of separated families as well as POWs, detainees, and abductees. But the North Korean government's repressive policies have impacted countless families around the world, not just in North Korea, not just North Koreans, but also Korean Americans, as we've been discussing.
There's one thing I would add is the endless creativity of the Korean American community is really the most endearing part of the American and Korean experience. That I will wanted to invite Julie. The coolest thing I've seen lately in Korean and American experience is Union Market in D.C. serves bulgogi tacos.
Okay.
Showing a combination of Korean cuisine and Mexican.
Yeah, right.
Which is, we have no idea how cool this will be.
Right. What are your hopes? Like, what do you want to see in the next 5-10 years as they are really getting old? Like, we don't even know what the future is going to be for them.
My wish and hope would be we see about 1,000 Korean Americans every month going to North Korea to meet their relatives before everybody gets too old. That would be nice. And no payoff to shadowy middle guys.
Also really hope that we can see family reunifications happen. as well as enough opening in the human rights situation in North Korea that those family members, once reunified, can maintain the contact that only comes when you live in an environment where you have the freedom of movement and freedom of expression and the ability to contact people without censorship and other forms of surveillance. And so hopefully we can work those two tracks simultaneously so that the Korean American community can be reconnected with their loved ones.
Ambassador Turner, Senator Kirk, could you tell us a little more about your engagement and interaction with divided families, North Korean defectors, and civil society and anybody who helps address the issues here in the U.S. and in Korea, South Korea specifically?
I always find it an honor and privilege to meet with members of the divided family community. I've shared with many of them my own experience as an adoptee and feeling that connectedness that I can't quite put a finger on to a place that feels like home but isn't home, but I want to be connected with. And so it also, there is a little bit of solidarity in that feeling, a longing for a place that you miss. And meeting with North Korean defectors or escapees is also powerful because these are people that overcame insurmountable obstacles to get to freedom, right? And to see them embrace American culture, to see them succeed is really powerful. And to see the energy coming from civil society groups who are doing advocacy in this space, that despite the very long time that they have been working to advocate for family reunions or for freedom in North Korea, that they've continued to persist. It inspires me to continue.
It's really important to have those voices heard.
It is, yes.
And we actually have to make the voices, right, to be
That's
heard.
right.
Yeah, Senator Kirk?
That's the point I would say. Don't be so Korean shy. Be American unshy. Because we American senators and congressmen expect you to speak out on behalf of your interests. We don't have unlimited time. We can do a lot of good here. Between the two countries, a lot of goodwill could be built with these families.
We appreciate your time to discuss the issue with us today here, Ambassador and Senator. We heard from Ambassador Julie Turner, the U.S. Special Envoy for the North Korean human rights issues, and Senator Mark Kirk, who's made tremendous effort to help reunite the families throughout his career. You can watch this discussion on our YouTube channel at WIN TV Chicago. Thank you for joining us today.